Graham Couch joins the show. We talk about Michigan State basketball, Michigan State football, optimism, and then what was the most contentious story he's ever been a part of on the Michigan State beat. But first, yes, another big official visit weekend. Let's go.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Spartan friends, Spartan family, Locked On Spartans listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to today's show of Locked On Spartans. Today's episode is brought to you by Birddogs. Go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege and they will throw in a free custom Birddogs Yeti-style tumbler with every order. Thank you so much for ending your week with us here at Locked On Spartans. We're going to get into the mix here right now on recruiting because it is the final weekend of official visits for Michigan State. And it does not lack any star power. This is a man that we've talked about up and down already this week, but we're going to start, just with the best and work our way down here as far as ratings go. Kicking things off with David Stone. The Eagle has landed. He is already on campus at Michigan State. He's been posting Snapchats, Instagram stories, and all the fun things that the youth like to do these days. But yes, he is on campus for his official visit right now. And, he did tweet something earlier this week that I thought was interesting. Apparently, there were rumors swirling that he silently committed to Oklahoma. That's the school that he's also been very close to. He's from the state of Oklahoma, after all, before transferring to IMG Academy down in Florida. And yeah, there were whispers that, hey, he's a Sooner, baby. He's already silently committed. But he tweeted out quite the opposite, that no, he is not committed anywhere, but also wrote at the very end of that tweet, he plans on visiting other schools before making his decision. So, while this is the last visit he will have this summer, as you guys may or may not know, there's no cap on the official visit count you can have. He can go all the way up to signing day, taking official visits at other schools. So, hey, just like we talked about with Brian Smith, our lockdown recruiting expert, this could take a while before a commitment hits, but hey, you also can't win the race if you never get off the starting blocks. And this official visit, after a few unofficial visits to Michigan State, lets Spartan Nation know that they are in the race for this dynamic five-star defensive lineman. Also, some very, very highly rated four-star players on campus as well. Deandre Carter, 6'5", 345-pound offensive tackle out of California. And not just California, but modern day. One of the top flight programs in high school across the country. He's visiting Michigan State. He's got a Texas visit already planned for September coming up, but has already visited USC, got more than a handful of times. So the Trojans, probably the team to beat here. And he's also visited Auburn last week as well. He's visiting Michigan State, so it's an interesting destination list for Deandre Carter. But hey, you know what? We've seen it. Offensive linemen want to play for Coach Cap. So if he could land this one, a top 100 kid in just about any recruiting service that you look at, yeah, needless to say, figuratively and literally, that would be a big one. Jason Brown, also coming from the West Coast, and this gets an F for fascinating. Jason Brown, top 100 player in the country out of Seattle. He is a running back. And guess how many official visits he's taken this summer? He's taken 0 so far. Michigan State is the only official visit destination for Jason Brown out of Seattle. Yes, there is smoke around him for Oregon, for Washington. But MSU is the only place he is officially visiting. Fascinating. So yes, of course, just like we talked about with David Stone, he could be visiting other schools in the fall. But hey, if he's going to commit in the summer, like some experts think, well, gee, it might not be far-fetched to see that it's going to be the place that he officially visited. So keep your eye on that one. Again, a long way to go until signing day, but hey, you know what? He's mentioned in interviews here and there that he likes what he sees from Kenneth Walker, the local NFL team. And, well, hey, where did Kenneth Walker go to school? Here at Michigan State. So K9, already sending a ripple effect that's already paying dividends in the future as well, should Michigan State land Jason Brown. Now, the last four-star visiting this weekend, this is a familiar face, a familiar name, and an old friend of the 2024 class. It is former commit Nick Marsh. And depending on who you talk to, Michigan State is either barely in the lead or they are barely behind Penn State. It really depends on who you talk to for this one. Call me crazy here. I know I'm cutting against the grain of what I usually do, especially talking about recruiting, but I feel a little optimistic, and allow me to knock on wood right now because, man, I don't know how many times I've said this, but my biggest fear is that he would go into that first weekend official visit with Penn State and then commit on the spot. The fact that he didn't commit on the spot, which is something that Penn State has been pretty good at this June, leads me to believe that, okay, the door might be open for Michigan State here. They get the last say with this kid before he decides to commit on July 7th. Again, hey, I'll say it for a third time. Long way to go until signing day. Nothing is official until Penn hits the paper, but he's already decommitted once. It'd be really kind of rare for a kid to decommit twice in the same cycle. So what happens on July 7th, I do have a good feeling it will stick throughout his senior season at River Rouge High School. So, oh God, I really hope that Mel Tucker, Courtney Hawkins, and the gang can lock up his commitment here. And now a kid with a more recent or up-to-date commitment date than Nick Marsh is Justin Denson, 3-star defensive back out of Rhode Island. He would be the first kid in the recruiting rankings era to commit to Michigan State out of the state of Rhode Island. And, well, he's got a pretty powerful top 5 here. He just visited Oklahoma. They're on his top 5 list. He just got a recent offer from Alabama about 2 weeks ago. That's in his top 5 as well. Also, he's visited Florida, who is rolling in recruiting right now. Also, Texas A&M. And then your 5th team in the top 5, you probably guessed it, it's Michigan State. So July 1st commitment date there. And there's already some smoke billowing and blowing in the direction of East Lansing for this kid. So hopefully they can put the final nail in this weekend for Justin Denson. Now, the other 2 kids are coming from the same house. It is twin brothers Charlton and Mercer Laniewski. All right, Charlton, 6'5", 280-pound interior offensive lineman. Mercer, 6'7", 300-pound offensive tackle. And my God, I'd love to see the grocery bills at the Laniewski house. You're better off just buying a farm and feeding these kids with the meat that you get from the cows and everyone that you're having over there. But yes, that would be some great beef to add to Michigan State. We already got a great recruit in Andrew Dennis, who, by the way, visiting Michigan State, I believe, for a 4th time this month. Kid's already been committed, and you might as well add him to the recruiting staff. But yeah, if you could add these 2 kids who were at Cincinnati last week, that's probably the top team to beat. They are from Cincinnati, so this isn't an automatic guaranteed commitment right here. That is going to be the 2-horse race, at least where their recruitment stands right now. Now, in non-official visit news, just 2 little quick tidbits here before we get to Graham Couch. Charles Lester was on campus in the middle of the week. Now, who on earth is Charles Lester? Well, he's just a 5-star cornerback from Venice, Florida. That's right. Venice, Florida might sound familiar. That's where Chuck Brantley is. And Chuck Brantley's younger brother was at a Michigan State camp over the week. So I talked with Justin Thin of 24/7 Sports, figuring out why on earth is this 5-star defensive back all of a sudden on campus at Michigan State when he's about to pick between, Alabama, Florida State, who's in the lead, in Colorado. Why is he in East Lansing? The theory is that, well, maybe he's friends with Chuck Brantley's younger brother and they just came up as a group together. Now, it is interesting that Charles Lester, after this unofficial visit, did cancel an official visit to Georgia this upcoming weekend, citing personal issues. But later on his Instagram stories, he did post inside of a courtroom supporting a family member or a friend. I don't know who it was, but that seems to be the personal issue. I know that there was some excitement of like, oh my God, Mel Tucker impressed Charles Lester this much, and this is why he canceled his official visit to Georgia. I think it was more so what he posted on his story than that, but I would give this maybe like a 1% chance of happening. Still exciting. And then, hey, to put a bow on the recruiting talk for now, Henry Hasselbeck, he was here a few weeks ago on an official visit. All Rivals future casts are on him. He visited on an unofficial in the middle of the week to show his mother around campus. So for the 3-star quarterback out of the New England region, Henry Hasselbeck, of course, son of former NFL quarterback Matt Hasselbeck. A lot of smoke seems to be blowing over to East Lansing as well. Now, we will get to our guy Graham Couch here in a hot second, but first need to talk your ears off about Bird Dog shorts. Gang, have you heard me earlier this week? You knew that I had the best Father's Day of all time because I didn't just get to spend it with my beautiful son and my beautiful wife, but I opened up a gift and inside, bang, pair of Birddogs. We talk about how great they fit, how versatile they are, but also you're just going to feel so incredible in these. Of course, got to get the ones with the liner on the inside. It's like wearing compression shorts around the house, around the restaurant, around the job if your office has a laid-back dress code like that. But yes, you could do it all in Birddogs, and you could do it feeling great, looking great. These guys are just like Lululemon shorts, except one difference, they fit a lot better. So, hey, as if having a great pair of shorts isn't enough, they're going to throw in some free stuff for you. That's right. If it's free, it's for me. And if it's free, well, it should be for you. Go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege for a free Yeti-style tumbler with every order. Hey, get the shorts for summer. Get the drink tumbler for the summer as well. That's birddogs.com/lockedoncollege for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You will not want to take your Birddogs off. We promise. You know who this man is. We're going to do an introduction anyway. It is Graham Couch of the Couch and Brew podcast of the Lansing State Journal and just being a great friend of this here show. Graham, welcome back. Thrilled to have you back on. How you been, my man?
I'm doing well. It's good to be here. It's been a while. I was worried I'd done something wrong. I hadn't been asked back in a bit. So
when it comes to people like you, I try to not beat the brakes off you just so like I don't burn you out and annoy you to the point that you say no. So I need to pick and prod carefully here when it comes to asking Graham Couch when to do things because I don't want to overdo it, Graham. I don't want to overdo it. That's the reason.
It would be very hard for you to do.
Okay, challenge on for August then. All right, there we go. We're going to hit the ground running. Graham, two times a week.
Yeah, meanwhile, I'm blocking your number now.
I would not blame you. Graham, so to start the show, we just did a little recruiting preview for this upcoming weekend. Your favorite topic, of course, to talk about, but look, that's a hot button issue in Michigan State right now, but hey, you're an esteemed member of the media. What story with Michigan State, or maybe even just college sports as a whole, is flying a little under the radar, in your opinion, so far this summer?
Yeah, no, it won't be soon, but, the Moneyball Pro-Am will be – oh, I apologize. That is my wife calling there.
Have her join. It'll be great.
The Moneyball Pro-Am to me is I think will be as big this year as it's been since Miles Bridges was a freshman and that group was in, and I think will be a lot of fun. And there will be, look, I think the one thing that's different between now and 2015 is 2016 is people have learned to take Moneyball with a grain of salt. So no matter how much Cohen Card dunks and how amazing it looks, and an open Pro-Am setting with very little defense that's sort of built for a guy like that, people won't just go, oh my gosh, he's the greatest thing ever. There'll be a little of that, but we've all learned from Tum Tum's three-pointers that Moneyball isn't entirely real. But I think that'll be fun, and that'll be a big deal this summer that I think people are slowly anticipating, but really hasn't gotten the buzz for how different it'll be than a year ago.
How many three-pointers will AJ Hoggard and Trey Holloman have to make in order for it to become a thing? Because, I mean, it is story, just like you said, the Tum Tum, hey, it's a three-point shooter now. Is it going to have to be like 300 three-pointers between the two of them where you could say, hey, this could be a thing this winter?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Hoggard did actually improve last year as a shooter. Like, he had an okay year. He was close to the number. I don't know what the final number was, but he told me in the summer, he said 35%, or maybe he said that at the beginning of the year, was the number he had to hit. Okay. That was if he did that, it would be hard to guard him, right? And so, he showed that he's a better shooter than he was a year ago. Now, if he can get above 35%, if he can become a 37% three-point shooter, that massive changes his dynamic, that changes his pro future, that changes a lot of things, I think, even. But we won't learn that in Moneyball because we've seen how good he looks. You're just not going to know that this summer. I think the things that you want to see that are real and you get a sense of is you do get a sense of a player's confidence and swagger and overall a little bit of the readiness in certain degrees. And you really have to, certain matchups allow for that. But it is really hard to judge. I remember watching Matt McQuaid one summer at Moneyball just cross people over and hit 40-footers and thinking, going into his freshman year. Like, how do you keep that guy off the floor? And you know what? He played a ton against Kansas in his first game ever and played really well. But he wasn't the player you see in Moneyball. So, like, it's a lot of fun. Cohen Carr, people think I don't like Cohen Carr, which is total rubbish. I don't know Cohen Carr. I have a hesitation to overhype him that's based on previous experience, because being a great dunker, which we know he is, does not make you a college-ready basketball player, because what's going to get him on the court is tenacity defensively and on the glass. And, like I bring up Doug Anderson, for example, and those who are of a certain age remember Doug Anderson played at U of D, was part of Mott Community College, what they called the Fly Boys. Probably one of the best videos I've ever seen of dunks. I saw him at a couple showcases, won a dunk contest just incredible. Best dunker I've ever seen. Kid from Kalamazoo Central. Very average basketball player. Played at U of D, was average there. And there's nothing that Cohen Carr has put on tape that I've seen that makes him a better player that you wouldn't have seen from Doug Anderson, 15 years ago, 10, 12 years ago, whatever it was. And so what I'm saying is I am sure that Cohen Carr is a better player than Doug Anderson just because of where he's rated as a recruit, who was interested in him. But there's no evidence of that yet that we've actually seen. So just keep, the dunking doesn't make your career. It'll make you fun to watch at times. But that's the but he's going to be fun to watch this summer.
And so it's just to circle back. AJ did finish the season at 32.9%, in case that was going to keep anyone up at night. A stark improvement from where he was the year prior. So it was definitely a weapon in his arsenal. And if he could get over 35%, like, that'll be a game changer. I want to keep it on basketball right now. And a column you did very recently on Jaden Akins. You were able to sit down with Akins. Is this correct? This is like a one-on-one with him? Okay. Did you get the sense that, he was fine with how everything with the NBA combine went, like not getting the invite, coming back to the campus, because he's from what I get from the outside, a hard person to read. He's kind of muted, but were you able to get a vibe of how he felt the offseason went for him?
Yeah, I think he and AJ Hoggard were both humbled by the process.
Okay,
Hoggard was, I think, told pretty quickly that you're not ready for this, and
gotcha.
Get in the best shape of your life, so to speak. But and when you don't get invited, that tells people something. You don't get the specific feedback. So I think he was. It made the choice pretty obvious for him. I think he was. I think he's okay with the way things went. I think he's okay being at MSU. I think he's one of, not everybody likes college, right? They don't like that. I think he likes college largely. You're right. He is not always an easy kid to read because he doesn't always seem interested in talking to you, right? And that's But with my experience with Jaden Akins, and one of the best things that MSU does is their access and their ability to create relationships with these players and get to know them, and it helps them. It really does. When these guys are in open locker rooms in the NBA or wherever in pro, this stuff, I think even in the NCAA tournament when the locker rooms are open, and you go in some of these other locker rooms and these kids are like, whoa, what's going? These guys are used to it. And to me, with Akins, once you get to know him, and once he's somebody who likes to be spoken to like a human, not just somebody you're prying information out of, how did this feel, speak to him as a person. And once you get to know him and he respects that out of you, he'll open up a little bit. I do think the most interesting stuff he said to me was about that he had earned the right to have his role change. And to be a bigger part of the offense by doing everything they've asked of him, by fitting in the team every which way, being a good teammate. And I think that's a big part of something he wants this year is, if he were 2 inches taller, 6'6", with all his skills, the NBA might look at him like a 3-and-D guy and say, well, that's fine. Do what you're doing. You're clearly a good shooter, over 40% already. Can defend tenaciously. We all saw that. If he had been on Marquise Noel earlier in the game against Kansas State, Michigan State still might be playing in that.
Okay.
Tournament. But his size at 6'4", at the next level, they need to see him create also with the ball. And that's something he did a little bit, but not a ton at Michigan State. And some of that's on him. Some of that's on the coaching staff to put him in that situation. But when you have a lot of the same team coming back, plus new guys coming in or heralded, you have to make sure that's a part of things, that you don't go back into what was developed last year and what became the offense, which might have been different had he not been hurt anyway. Things formed when he was injured, right? He was out September and October, and he comes back, and then he's out parts of November, and he sort of had to fit into what had been built. And so that's no one's fault, really. But I think this year he's very cognizant of that, and he wants to be a bigger part of what they're doing.
And I just want to switch sports here because, when I have you on, I just like to temperature check a lot of things, or maybe sometimes have you just dump a bucket of cold water if I'm getting too ahead of my skis here, because Graham, for the 20th offseason in a row, no matter how Michigan State football does the season before, like the clown that I am, I always come around eventually in the offseason thinking yeah, this is going to be the year. This is going to be a great year. And hey, lo and behold, here we are. It's June 22nd where I finally woke up and said, these boys, 7-5 for sure, maybe 8-4. Do I have reason to feel this optimistic? Look, I'm high in the offensive line. I think the receivers, yes, they lost Keon Coleman, but everyone, while unproven, I think is talented. We could have one of the best front sixes in the conference. Hey, new quarterback. Who cares? Can't be that big of a drop-off from last year. Secondary quite literally can't get any worse. Just not even going to think about kicking right now or punting. But, do you just want to take a fire hose right now and just say, let's calm down? The over-under is 5.5 for a reason over there? Or,
No, but because I think you have as much reason to be optimistic as you would have to be pessimistic.
Yeah, and which so I'm good at too. Right.
There's just so much that's unknown. We're just not going to know. At some point, you would think if things are going well in the program, they will take a substantial step in the trenches, and we'll see it.
Yeah.
If they're a lot better on the offensive line and really good on the back end, really good at the defensive line, and the defense finally gets to a point where it has some strengths where they're not just trying to survive being on defense, we could see them take a pretty big jump where they're just the more solid core to the football team. I tend to think that probably happens in 2024 more than it does in 2023. But that doesn't mean it won't. And they've got a lot more depth on the offensive line. We don't know at the quarterback position, right? You're going to have an unproven player facing new situations in big games, and that may go well. It may not. We just don't have an idea. But I think you're right. I think they'll be okay at the skill positions. I don't think there's any reason to think it can't go well. When people have asked me about the over-under, the reason the year they were at 4.5 for the over-under 2 years ago with Kenneth Walker, the reason I was telling people to hammer that over is because I could just tell how little respect there was versus what I thought would be a decent team. I didn't know Kenneth Walker would be what Kenneth Walker was, but you knew they were going to be decent. This year, you can go through the schedule and easily come to a place where they're at 5 wins going into Ford Field facing a 10-1 Penn State team needing to win 6 to get to 6. At that point, you might as well just take the money line on Michigan State and win a lot more. But because look at a team like Maryland. Does Maryland take a sizable jump? That's early in the season before Maryland usually falls apart too. There's so many opponents we don't have a feel for. And the schedule is difficult. But, there's no reason not to be optimistic.
Yeah, I guess the bucket of cold water that always comes is actually looking at the schedule. Hey, get to go to Kinnick Stadium, Maryland, in the month of September when they still have hope and faith in themselves. But whatever, we're just going to whistle by that graveyard and not even think about that. I'm trying to be optimistic going into the rest of the summer here because no one wants to hear me just be negative Nancy for the next few
you don't. We wait all year for football season, be it the NFL, college, whatever. And when it arrives, you want hope. There will be excitement. There will be buzz just because there always is. And it's fun football season is fun and it's supposed to be fun. And you don't need to throw cold water on that before. That may happen. It may happen as early as the Washington week. If it happens in week 1, that'll be a really depressing situation for a lot of people. But
a little bit.
but yeah, if that happens, it happens. But there's no reason to put cold water on a season before it happens.
Okay, you know what? I'll take that. I do want to circle back to a story that's probably a month old at this point. I don't know. My concept of time is horrible. It's the game from Spartan Stadium moving to Ford Field. And no, everyone, I'm not going to go through my talking points and everything and argue for it. I just want to ask you, Graham, as someone that's been around Michigan State, again, I have no concept of time. You've either been here for 5 years or 25 years. You've been here long enough to know this fan base. Have you ever seen a story as contentious amongst the fan base as this game moved from Spartan Stadium to Ford Field? Because it seems like it's split down the middle at 50-50, and no one's just lukewarm on it. People are passionate about this topic. Is there any other story with Michigan State that you can remember that had this kind of a reaction?
That's a really good question, and not off the top of my head, but I'm sure there have been moments. But what made this different is it was so regional, and in the sense that if you're from Detroit, you love it. If you're from the suburban Detroit, if you're from the West Michigan, you hate it. If you're from East Lansing or the Lansing area in Michigan, you could go either way. What you usually do on Thanksgiving, the traditions, the experiences you had in that game in Spartan Stadium shape your views. So everybody's had their own experiences, and I can see them all. I think there is the danger that there are 30,000 Penn State fans or 20,000 Penn State fans, and a really good Penn State team steamrolls them, and it's sort of a disaster.
Gotcha.
But there's also, if it's just happening once, it's a cool environment. You're not freezing your butt off. You're able to have a beer. It's Thanksgiving weekend. I think it works better on a holiday weekend when you're out of routine anyway on that Friday. You may be able to take extra people, in-laws, whatever, build your weekend around it. I don't hate it once, but I understand why people don't love it, and I understand why people feel disrespected by it if you're a longtime season ticket holder and it's inconvenient.
The only other story that I can really think of where it was almost a civil war breaking out amongst the fan base, maybe 2013, early in the season with the quarterback battle of like the we want Terry versus Cook versus Maxwell. Like that was a pretty good one as well. But the 2017 loss against Syracuse wasn't fun either, but I think that was just everyone being very upset and just going for each other's throat at that point.
I'm going to be one of the few people on the Ben Carter train still. So no.
No, you have a soldier over here as well. We are a small army, but we are a loud army, and I know that a majority of the listenership right now probably just punched their drywall over that take, but Ben Carter was the right guy there. I know specifically Matt C. is listening to this right now, and he's had an aneurysm, but I'm a Ben Carter soldier, man. Yep.
To your 2013 quarterback point, though, I think that should be the first time that we said we shouldn't let fans pick the quarterback. Right?
Yeah.
There are examples throughout history of why at MSU, and I'm not saying, look, I know Kim Katenhauser. I don't know how to work out. I don't know what Peyton Thorne would have been this year. Right. I tend to think a guy who's a 2-year starter, if he's healthy, might have been the best option. But I don't think Peyton Thorne last year didn't play at a level that didn't warrant the other guys being in the mix. And I think for Peyton that was hard because he thought he played in some tough situations, played through some injuries, played with a lot of other guys beat up. But it is where it is now. I don't think you worry about that a ton. But I do think one of my favorite things about just different fan discourse is the quarterbacks over time. And at Michigan State, it's almost never been the heralded guy. It's almost always been, it was not Keith Nickel who won the job, right? It was Kirk Cousins. It was not Damian Terry. Messiah DeWeaver wasn't the guy who panned out.
Sure. There's
just been a number of those going back in time, way back and even in the late 90s. So, the beauty of the position to me is it always plays out on the field. Like you knew after they put we knew about Andrew Maxwell before, but you certainly knew after that final 2-minute drive against Notre Dame in 2013, it might be the worst 4 plays at quarterback that I've ever seen. That wasn't going to be the guy, right? And I liked Andrew a lot. Like and I remember
great kid.
Yeah. But you just knew that his time it wasn't going to be him, and they got lucky that Cook, 2 weeks later at Iowa wound up being ready.
The 4th and 20 scramble didn't inspire you to end the game. That didn't make you say that's the man moving forward. Okay.
That game is still one of those. You talk to MSU fans to this day, and I'm going to do something later this summer, sort of some best what ifs of all time, right? And one of them is, what if they had won that game? There were a number of pass interference calls. There were a number of the quarterback thing still wasn't in play. And obviously, if you had today's 4-team playoff, they might have gotten in. The 12 team, they certainly would have been in. They would have had a chance at a national championship. But I'm also not sure that a lot of MSU fans would trade that Rose Bowl experience and that sort of pilgrimage to Pasadena. There was the last great Rose Bowl, the last Rose Bowl before the playoff, the 100th Rose Bowl, all the things that, I mean, people have been waiting to die to go to that game. And I don't know that you get something truly more tangible out of it. And I say that, and I would guess that's generational too, because most people under the age of 30 are like, that's a chance at a national championship. But
sure.
But I would say most people over 45 would, at this point in their lives, would have just assumed had that Rose Bowl experience.
I'm in that camp too, because like you can't go a month on Twitter without someone bringing it up, like, oh, we would have won the national title that year. It's maybe, but like maybe. I just
they would have had a chance. They had a chance.
Yeah, you would have had a chance, right?
They would have had a chance, in the if you go to the 12-team playoff, they would have had a chance in 2014 too. Apologize.
No, you're
good. They would have had a chance in 2014 too. I thought that team, which lost to Oregon early in Mariota and then lost to JT Barrett on the best day Barrett ever was. I think those are, that's also a what if more than 2015, where by the time they got there, they were really beat up.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's like why I can't feel my blood pressure even rise a single iota when like the 2013 season's brought up. Like, oh, we could have won a national title. It's like, yeah, okay. So our second place prize was Big Ten title against Ohio State, keeping them from a national title, and then going to win the last Rose Bowl, the 100th Rose Bowl. Like, I'm sorry if that's loser mentality, but that seems like a pretty good season still. Like,
the size of the trophy wound up being so great anyway that it doesn't. It's not like they were in the Citrus Bowl instead, and so I think that lessens that feel a little bit. I mean, the fact that they didn't. It would have been nice. Obviously, the program would have loved to have gotten back and had that shot again. They did get to a playoff, and the dynamic had been different. But yeah, you would love for them to have that 2013 team get to take a swing, and that team got enough. I mean, I think people will how that team made people feel, not just winning that game, but the think about the 28-6 Michigan win. And how that possession where it wound up 4th and 48 or whatever, how that level of dominance that I've still never seen, and just overwhelming another team I've never seen since. And, I mean that team gave people plenty of pleasure.
Right, so that's why I can just fall asleep happy, at least for that season. I'll still lose sleep for plenty of other things related to Michigan State, but we'll tackle that at another time. Graham, I gotta say too, this morning I was just like taking notes for my show, like, oh, what can I do in the future? Hey, let's do top 5 what ifs. So now it's gonna just look like I just stole your column.
Yeah, don't do that until it comes out, man. That's
I know.
No, but you're doing 5 days a week. Hey, 5 days a week is tough. I did a 5 day a week podcast for a year and a half, and
it's a fun grind.
The desperation that seeps in at certain moments is real. It's real.
Yeah, but hey, the grind is the grind. I just got to keep chopping over here. So there it is. And it really helps when great people like you join us, Graham. Again, can't thank you enough for all your time, your insight. Really, really appreciate you stopping by. Anything you want to plug here before we let you go enjoy the rest of your week?
No, I really don't. I mean, I've got Moneyball next week. We'll have stories. We'll be out there. I think it'll be fun for people to get into, and we'll be there to cover it.
Look at that. Well, hey, until then, Graham, enjoy your weekend. And everyone else, thank you so much for listening. If any news breaks over the weekend, of course, we will be back talking about it. It's Locked on Spartans, your team in green and white. Love you all. Go green.